Welcome to Cinema 4D. Today we're going to be doing our lock and key assignment using the storyboard images and mood board images we put together. So I'm going to be using my front orthographic view to load in my mood board images as I'm using those as a reference. And I selected one key in particular to use. So I'm going to go to load that image in. I'm going to go to front orthographic view, view, configure, back. Now you can load that image into your orthographic view by pressing on the folder, going into, I made a folder for lock and key. I'm selecting my key. I'm pressing open. And now that's loaded into our front orthographic view. Now there's several ways I can control that. I would like to have the keys shaft being directly where the green line is. So it's at exactly the center, and that's going to be necessary for a number of reasons when we use our lathe tool and other tools. So now I've loaded that in. I'm going to scale it down, reposition on the x-axis, and just like we spoke about before, I'm going to use my option button, option right mouse button to zoom in. And I'm going to be making a number of curves here to represent what we'd like to extrude. We'd like to extrude this section of the key as well as this key section of the key. We'd like to use the lathe tool on this section of the key. We're also going to be making splines for this section and this section of the key. So I'm going to make splines for that right now, and the school would like us to save that so everything is named in our objects menu. So this is our objects menu right here. I'm going to be using my spline pen, which is right here on the left-hand side. I'm going to confirm that I'm in standard mode and model mode. So now that I've confirmed that, I'm going to go ahead and trace. I'm going to go from top to bottom. So option right mouse button. I'm going to click and draw with as few amount of points as possible their circumference of this portion of the key. So this doesn't have to be perfect because this is just something that we're basing the key off of. I can always add in additional points. So this is going to be extruded from this spline that I've just made using the extrude generator tool. I'm going to press the shift key so I can have a 90-degree turn. And it's very important that we connect the first point to the last point. Now that I have that completed, I'm going to do the hole, this keyhole. As we spoke about, I'm doing as few points as I possibly can while achieving a smooth look. And we can control these points in several different ways by pulling this Bezier point up or by clicking, and I can choose from hard tangent or soft tangent. I'm satisfied with that. Now I'm going to do what else? The other portion of the key I'd like to extrude, this bottom portion here. This is very similar to Illustrator or Photoshop. I really prefer Illustrator or Photoshop, but the tools here are slightly different. Remember, you can use the Shift key to make a 90-degree turn by pressing Shift, clicking and dragging for a Bezier point, Bezier curve. And very importantly, so we know what is what, I'm going to double click on this and call this key extrude. Now I'm going to work on the portion of the key I'd like to do a lathe of. And this, I'm going to actually make this look more dramatic than it actually is. So I'm going to go ahead, select my point, my spline pen, make sure it's on Bezier mode under options. So notice here, we're only going to do the sections of the key until we get to the center green line. Everything besides that does not need to be done. So if I want to escape, I can press the escape button and I can add to my curve at any point by selecting a Bezier point. When I'm done, I'm going to press escape. So I press escape and I'm going to move this to the center line here. All right, so now we have that section. I'm going to call that key lathe. And this works, that generator tool works just like a potter's wheel to revolve this around this center section. This green line will be the center and everything else will be aligned, will be revolved around this point here. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and draw some points. I'm going to be cloning some metallic dots onto this section here. So I'm going to again make a new path for this. Click and drag, click and drag, click and drag. Press escape to get out of that and come to the other section, click and drag. All right. Now we're done with that. I'm going to make another point for this. And instead of using the cloner, well, you're going to use another generator tool for this object. And I'll be going over each one of those. Escape, press again. Notice that I'd like to include a separate path on a separate layer for this bottom section. So I'm going to name this one cloned diamonds, because I'm going to be placing diamonds on there. All right. Now I'm going to be making one more path for this outer piece here. Escape. All right. Escape. We're going to be using the sweep tool for this. So I'll call that sweep generator. The last tool we're going to use is the text tool to make this poison text. Press on the text, come over to the first one, where it's automatically going to be extruded. And you'll notice a lot of things will be much larger than they need to be at first. I'm going to use the E tool to move. Press on text. Enter poison. Press T for scale. So we'll be using those tools over and over and over again. All right. Okay. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and go back into 4-up mode. I'm going to press my middle mouse button, or I can press this toggle active view, and you can see all of the splines that I just produced. Now that I've done that, I've called this, I'm going to save this file, save as. I'm going to save it into my Cinema 4D file I made. So you should have a folder that's called Lock and Key. I'm going to save it in my Cinema 4D folder, press save, replace, and now I can go ahead. We're going to be using save incremental for every major step we complete in this process. So let's start out with the lathe tool. So the lathe, right here, you'll notice that we have a lot of different generators that we can use. The first one is lathe. It works like a potter's wheel. So the center of the wheel is revolved around this green line. If you notice here, this is the green line right here, and I'm going to be revolving this line, this Bezier curve around this green line. So I'm going to create a lathe generator by going to my generators palette, going to lathe, and then taking the key lathe and making a child of this generator. Notice I'm dragging it on top and you'll see a little arrow pointing down. And then if I release it, this key lathe, becomes a child of the lathe generator. I'm then going to come back into my perspective view, and you can see how that works out really nicely. And it's infinitely editable. So I can edit these points at any time. I've noticed a mistake down here. So I'm going to fix that by clicking on this point, dragging it back, clicking here. And maybe I would like to make this a smoother point. You can go right click, soft tangent. Okay. And I'm happy with that, especially knowing that I have the ability to come back and edit that at any point in time. So I'm definitely going to name everything. Okay, that's my first one. My second one will be to do an extrude. So I'm going to make an extrude generator. And so I'm pressing on my generator's fly out menu. I'm going to locate extrude. So extrude is just like making a cookie. You're pressing the material through a spline to make any shape you'd like to make. And I'm going to take my key extrude and, like we did before, make it a child of the extrude generator release. And that worked out pretty nicely. We are going to do a number of things. Number one is we need to make sure we're in perspective mode, which we are. I'm then also going to click on extrude and take it to a thickness that I find that we find appealing. And then I'm going to press E and move that directly on top. So I'm happy with that. I would like to get this to edit my lathe object so it fits closer. So I can do that by going in here. That's good enough for right now. Okay. We have everything named. I'm going to call this key extrude. And importantly, I'm also going to close up anything I'm not using. I'm going to close up that folder. So we don't have a lot of extraneous things. We only have what we need. Now that I've done that, I'm going to press on my key lathe. And if we come down to attributes, it'll show me all the different options I have to edit my key lathe. I go from left to right. This is how I can transform my object going back and forth. I want to be working with my extrude. Come down to object, and I can control the offset that I have for this. That's looking good to me. All right. And then I'm going to work with caps. So caps, Cinema 4D has done a lot to give us some beautiful different caps, and I can control if it's round. Caps is the actual edge of, it controls the edge of the object. So I'm going to come over to load presets, and I'm going to load in, let's try this guy right here. Keep it simple. This is infinitely editable. I can control the size of my caps. the number of subdivisions. That means how smooth the curve can be, the tension, and by clicking and dragging on the number, you can increase or decrease these values. So this is subjective to what you like. And we'll go into more detail in the future. Next, I'm going to put my text and have my text being overlaid on the front of the key. So I'm going to press on text and always making sure to press on my arrows. Instead of like Photoshop, I can click directly on this. Illustrator, doesn't matter where I click. For this program, you want to make sure that you are always clicking on these arrows to move things around. So now I have my extrude key, which is represented with this. I have my lathe, which is this section here of my key. And now I want to subtract the key, the text from the key. So it's kind of like I'm engraving this poison and subtracting where it's being overlaid on. So wherever the text is intersecting with the key, it's going to be subtracted out. So let's see, we can do that by using the bool tool. So I'm going to come here and go directly down to Boolean. So bool we can use in Photoshop by adding, subtracting, or having a union. I'm going to go to bool and place both of these objects by clicking on extrusion key, shift clicking on key lathe, and then with my left mouse button, dragging them onto Boolean. I'm going to press on Boolean because Cinema 4D is not very smart. You have to select what you want to change, and then it'll know it'll show you what options you have with that. So whatever's on top is A, whatever on bottom is B. I'm going to press on Boolean. Currently, it defaults to union. I would like to have that on subtract. And we want to have two pieces in there. We want to have our text and our extruded key. And there we go. So I put two parts, my extruded key, which is this, and my text, which is poison. And now I'm going to press on the poison text, and I want to have some additional inset. And there we go. There, that's what I'm looking for. Now I'm going to close that up. There we go, key lathe, and we have our extrusion top. I'm going to line up this bottom with that. And I can go ahead and increase this. This is good for this point. We'll be improving that in the future. So let's take a look. Now that our key is really coming together, let's give it some materials. So I'm going to go to materials, and materials is very influenced by what renderer we're going to use. So we have 3 render buttons. Then what we need to use now is the gearbox one, which is the settings of our renderer, how it's going to render out. We're going to be using the standard renderer since we're just beginning. So I've set that gearbox standard, and now I can click out of that. I'm then going to click on one of our 4 magic buttons, and these allow us, they're kind of like drawers where we can open and close them to bring up different options of the program. I want to work with this drawer. It's called the Asset Browser button drawer. I'm going to click on Materials, and it's important that we come down and we only use the legacy materials to start out with. I'm going to come over to Metal, and look at this. We can click and drag and add this metal to the object. This is I like this bronze here. I'm going to add that to my key, and then I'm going to have a separate text for the metal, for the text portion. So let's try some different ones. Maybe to make it stand out, and I can always change this very easily in the future. Maybe some smooth bronze, and I'm going to let it release on poison text. That's not really brilliant enough. Maybe I'll try some gold. Notice when I release, it's putting a tag, and the tag is the item that stands next to the right of the layer here. If I hover over anything, it'll tell me what it is. It says next to this is the material tag. It's using gold. So that's looking pretty good to me right now. I'm then going to give a material to my lathe. We could stick with another bronze material. Maybe look like, so it is, because it is one unified material, I could come over here and I can make a copy by holding down Control and dragging it to my object. And now we have the same material all the way down. In the future, we can edit that, but I'm satisfied with that for right now. All right, I'm finished with this drawer of materials. I can press on it again so I can use all the real estate that I need. I'm going to close up everything that I'm not using. And now I'm going to take my sweep. I'm going to use my cloned diamonds spline. I'm going to press middle mouse button to go to 4-up mode. Click on clone diamonds, press E, and let's move that out. There's many benefits to being in 4-up mode because I can see from the top, perspective, right view, and front view. I hit Command A to select all of my splines, and now I can move them up, and I can see them in my front view. By middle mouse button, I can bring them into my, so I'm just looking at the front view. And now I'm going to use my cloner tool, another one of my generators. So we're using a lot of different generators within the program for this particular key. I'm going to choose the clone. And it's another set of generators. the cloner. I'm going to take my clone dime. I'm going to click on my cloner. I'm going to come and now I see all the attributes in the properties of my cloner. And right now I'm on a grid array. I'd like to use for this a linear array. A linear, so I'm going to go down to linear. I'm going to come to, instead of object, I'm going to come to, I'm sorry, I'm going to use my object mode. I'm going to go to clones, iterate, and then I'm going to drag the spline that I'd like these items to follow along, which is this spline right here. So I'm going to drag my cloned diamonds into the object menu, and then I'm going to make a small diamond by going to my primitives menu. So primitive, now I'm in primitives. These are all the different primitives I can make. And the primitives I want to make is a platonic. Here's my platonic. It's very large right now. Notice that I have many different, I can make many different types of platonics. Let's see what one looks the best. It's up to you what you want to use. I think that's looking pretty good. Keep it simple because we have a very low, it's going to need to be very small. I'm going to press T to scale that down. Going to come back to middle mouse button, and drag this platonic as a child of the cloner. Aha. So now we have accrued, we've placed these platonic items along this spline, and it's doing the work for us, which I like. The more work I can get Cinema 4D to do, the better. I'm going to press on cloner, and I'm going to try some different values here. I can control how many diamonds I'd like to have. I think 10 looks good. I can control the offset, and I can even animate this offset, but I'd like them to be distributed evenly. And right now, they're kind of distributed randomly. You can come down to sort. That's still not blend. And I'm going to come down. Our secret distribution is we currently are on count. Let's try even. And even gives us an even distribution of these diamonds along the spline. I'd like those platonics to be diamonds to be smaller. Press T for transform. There we go. Maybe these could even be rubies. So let's try that. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go to glass, or maybe I've found that a lot of times if I use an actual ruby, it's too not translucent enough. Glass simple works very nicely. It's not visible at first. So I'm going to go ahead and change the color of that by double clicking on the material, coming over to color, changing the color to red. I can get a simple glass I even can control the brightness. So for right now, that's good. I can even control the transparency. So there's many materials is a class within itself, but I have refraction preset to glass. I could put it to ruby. That's how the light is going to be bent when it enters and exits this ruby material. So that's looking good for right now. I can always edit that infinitely. So I'm going to close that. I'm going to type in cloner Ruby so I know what it is in case I want to edit it in the future. And now I'm going to come down to cloned diamonds. I'm going to put that as a child of the Ruby as well. Actually, it's best to be left outside. The last thing I want to do is my sweep generator. So the sweep generator was the path along here. And if I press middle mouse button, close this up, press on sweep generator, press E for move. We want to select that path and bring it out. I'm going to click on my spline pen so I can select that. Command A to select the whole thing. And now it's being brought out to the front. And we're going to take a spline, a circular spline, and we're going to have that whole circle. It's like pumping cookie dough through a circular spline. So here is my rectangle tool, but if I press on that, I can come over to my circle, release. Let's make that circle the size we want. T for transform, E for move, T for transform. Now I'm going to make that circle, put that as a child of the sweep generator. So I'm dragging it over until I see this arrow pointing down. So now I'm going to go ahead and get my sweep generator by hitting subdivision surface and coming to sweep. And then I would like to place two objects inside my sweep generator. my spline, and my circle. So I can hit Command, Control, and put both of them as a child of the sweep. I'd like to have the circle on the top and the spline that we want it to go along on the bottom, both as a child of the sweep. So I can see right now off the bat, I'd like to have that circle smaller, T for scale, and click and drag with my left mouse button. And there we go. That's looking good to me. Think about it like icing on a cake. I'm going to press on sweep. And now look at all the different options we have. You got a caps, round, increase that. I'd like this to be poking outward. Decrease my tension. So if I take my tension here, I'm liking the way that's looking. Take my sweep, E for move, press on my button here, my brush selection, and now I can move that into the actual object. So it's sitting on top of this. The great thing about this is that I can edit it at any point. So if this is coming below and we want to edit that, I can press on my sweep generator and come over to spline pen. Select one, shift two, pull that up, turn this back on, and now we've edited that. Let's give that a gold. So I'm going to go ahead, just press Control on the material tag I want to copy, drag it up to sweep. Now we have it right there. So that's basic. Basically, that's doing okay. I can always edit this. Let's say I want to go in and change the way these diamonds, where these diamonds are. I can go into my cloner Ruby, press E for move, and move these rubies up. See how easy that moves. Really nice. I really like that. Take these. I think these are too close. Move them in. Yeah, move that down. Fairly cool. I like that. I mean, other 3D programs don't offer the same flexibility as this does. I'm not satisfied with how the text is. I want to make that, edit that. I'm going to select my poison text, hit T for transform, make that smaller, E for move, use those same three keys over and over again. And there we go. So now we've gone over how to use many different generators, including the sweep, the cloner, how to clone an item along a spline, how to do an extrusion to make this extrusion shape, and also how to use the lathe generator to make this lathe object here. So we can edit this in the future, but this is our basic key. And now we'd like to go ahead and start animating this key. So to do that, I want to put this in a group. To place this in a group, I can shift click on the lower one, then shift click on the top one, and we want to put this in a group, or what this program calls a null. We can do that by Option G. I'm going to call this key. That's looking great. The one thing we need to make sure is that we have currently, we need to have this. This is where the center of the key is and how it will be rotated. It's crucial for our animation process that we have that at the exact center of the key. It looks perfect now, but let's take a look of what would be incorrect. So to do that, I'm going to press on this key, this button here, and it's an important button. It's important to remember. I recommend taking notes so you can come back and know how to prevent errors. This button is called Enable Access. So if I press that and it's selected, I can say tell Cinema 4D, when I rotate this, I want to rotate this key here. Now that wouldn't be correct. I'm going to move it back to the correct spot, which is in this very center of the axis. And I can see that by looking at my top view, my perspective view, my right view, and my front view. They're all telling me I'm in a good spot. I'm going to zoom in to confirm that. I can see I'm a little bit off. And when I'm done, I'm satisfied. I'm going to need to make sure I turn Enable Access off. Think about that like the fulcrum or the axle of your item. I'm going to turn that off now. And now, when I rotate this item, by the way, I'm going to need to save. So I'm going to go Command S to save. Now that we've completed a major section of this, and also File, Save Incremental. That'll label this up to my next V number. So I can go back in time in case I'm not happy with something. I can go back to the previous version. Let's take a look. I have the key. I'm now going to rotate the key and see if it works correctly. R for rotate. And look at that. It's working perfectly. There's some things I might want to change on this, but for this point in the process, I'm happy with how this key looks. So I'm going to save, and then I'm going to turn the key off because we're going to be making the key whole. So I can hold down my Option button, turn these eyeballs off. Just in case you forgot, these eyeballs, the first one is what's visible. Green is visible, red is invisible, and gray is our default view. Then I can control and touch the bottom one. The bottom one is just says what should render in my final animation. So it's important that you probably have these both always, especially when you render, you have these both as gray or green. I'm going to turn this off because I don't want to see that at this time. I'm going to load in, middle mouse button, come back over to front view, zoom out, and we're going to do this same thing we did for the keyhole by going to view, configure. Notice I'm definitely in, just to make sure, I'm in the front view. If we do this in the perspective view, you won't be able to use what you have. So I'm in the front view, going to view, configure, back. I'm going to load in my keyhole. So this is the one I wanted to use. I'm going to press open. Now I'm going to copy that. I'm going to use this as the basis to extrude from, and I'm going to make sure I'm in standard mode. I'm in model mode. If you don't know what's what, you can always just hover over that. It'll tell you what it is. And then I'm going to come over to spline pen. So a large portion of this is going to be extrusion. I'm going to just click using my spline pen, making sure I'm on Bezier mode, click and drag, holding my shift key down to make a 90-degree turn, click, click and drag, holding my shift key for a 90-degree turn, click and drag, click and drag, shift, click, click, click and drag, shift, make our 90-degree turn, and now I am done. Remember, yeah, we can edit these infinitely. I'm happy with that. Now I need to do one of these for this hole here, and definitely for the keyhole and the one at the bottom. Click on the spline again. Make sure if it's not creating a path that you click on your Bezier path, your spline pen, and we're going to click and drag. It's important that you don't just click, 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 but that you do the click and drag, and you always have the option to edit. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to come over here. Click and drag. I'm going to do a shift click. If you get into a point, you can always click. There we go. All right. If you see a point that's a hard tangent that you'd like to turn into a soft tangent, you can click on any point, right click, and come down to soft tangent. Click, right click, soft tangent. There we go. So that is our spline for our keyhole. Now let's do a spline for all the internal sections of our keyhole, or this, because we're going to want to use the sweep to sweep a circle along this section so we can have some beautiful details. The more details, the better your object will look. Doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do our extrusion. Just like last time, we'll click on our generator tool and come down to extrude, release it on extrude, and take this and make it a child of your extrude. You won't see the extrusion until you go into your 4-up mode into perspective. So let's make that a more realistic. Width, object, offset. There we go. Okay. I'm going to keep it simple. Come down to spline, press E, remove. If when I select something, if I'm not seeing it, I can hit Command A. Make sure I'm in model mode. That's my keyhole. We're not going to need that, but I'm not going to need that. I'm looking for the other spline I made. This spline here. So now that I have that, if you can't see what you're looking for, just turn everything off until you locate what you're looking for. I can press move this forward. Now I can see that. And we've used the extrude generator. Now we're going to go in here and look for this sweep generator. Make the spline a child of the sweep. And now we need to add in our circle at a very small radius. So I'm going over to where we have pre-built splines, choosing circle, making it, I'm going to be making that very small, T for transform, until I have that very small, make that a child of the sweep. There we go. I'd like to make it even smaller, T, something like that. Now I could, I mean, if I was doing this for real, I'd make it even put more time into it. But for right now, it's looking good. I'm going to come over to my secret drawer, pull up materials, pull up metal, and let's take a look. Maybe this could be, aha, that's important. We need to be using legacy materials, and we need to be using any of these materials under legacy. So I want, this is kind of a spooky scene, so I'm going to choose something that's more rustic. That's good for right now. I'm also going to put a screw in. So besides materials, we have the ability to get many other objects here. S, C, R, E, under models. So I'm pressing on not materials, but models. I'm starting to type in screw. It's not showing up for me. Here are some. They called them slightly different. And there it is. I see a screw, double click. It comes directly into my scene. I'm going to pull that outwards. I would like it to be facing our object. So to do that, I'm going to go into coordinates. Going to press T for transform. There's our screw. R for rotate. If I press shift, it'll go into 5-degree increments. There we go. E for move. In 4-up mode, you can see I can see a lot, so many things in 4-up mode that I would never be able to see just in perspective mode. So don't be afraid to go into 4-up mode. E, let's move that out. The number one thing I see that new students do, they try not to go into 4-up mode, but I'd say 4-up mode is your friend. So um, go there whenever it's beneficial to you. So I have one screw, Command C, Command V, save, because this program can crash. File, save incremental. It saves up to the next version number. Pull the screw down to below here. And to make it look more realistic, I'm going to drag so I have the same metal. And it creates a tag. So whatever tag is more to the right is the one that will be used as your tag, as your material. And now we have that. I'm liking that. So now that we're done with that, organization is key because we want to be as creative as possible. To be creative, we need to have everything organized so we can focus on creativity instead of wondering where everything is. I'm going to select all the objects from this plate, the keyhole, and hit Command Option G. And I'm going to call that keyhole. Organization is really key. So now that we have that there, let's go ahead and take our key and place it into our lock and have it properly scaled. So to do that, I'm going to press R for rotate, hold my friend the shift key down. So I go in 5-degree increments. So now I'm at -90. Now I'm going to hold the shift key down again and go to 90. I'm going to R rotate again, shift till I have it at 180. Now I'm going to press E for move, and let's pull that out and make sure it can come out of this without bumping against the metal. So T for transform, E for move. I'm liking that. Let's pull this a little bit here. That's looking good. Okay, let's slide it all the way in. And there we're going. There, I'm happy with that. All right, so now it can turn. It's looking good. I'm going to press save. And let's go ahead and create the door before we create the key animation. And because this is a beginner's class, we're going to be creating a simple door. Just for safety, I'm going to go to File, Save Incremental. And then I'm going to create a simple cube for the door. Then I'm going to go T for transform. So it's important to remember to keep everything at the center. Wherever it, if you keep everything in the center, meaning where the X and the Y meet, you will save yourself a tremendous amount of time. So here's the key is keep everything in the center. That means never moving the key and keyhole from the center. We're always going to leave that at the center. And I'll move everything else in relation to that. That will save you a lot of frustration. So I'm going to press cube, make it visible, and let's make a simple door. So I'm not going to move the key and keyhole. I'm going to move this to where I feel it's appropriate. Doesn't have to be perfect. And there we go. That's what I'm looking for. So we do need to have a hole in the door so we can see through this keyhole and we can have light shining through it as well. To do that, what we're going to do is we're going to use the bool tool again. So click on my generator tool, come over to bool, and then we're going to drag this door. I'm going to call it door. Inside the bool. And now we need something to punch a hole in the door so there's no wood in that section of the door. So we can use a simple primitive cylinder, rotate that 90 degrees. Hit T for transform. Now it's filling up that spot. Notice that since we have been moving the key or the keyhole, everything is coming up right where it needs to, saving us a lot of work. Now I'm going to drag my cylinder into the bool, press on Boolean, and look at this. Object, currently it defaults to union. We want subtract, and we're going to put the door at the top and the cylinder at the bottom, and that is now allowing us to see through the door. That door is, aha, the cylinder does need to be moved so it removes all of the wood. That should work. Yep, now that's a complete hole. Very similar to what like a locksmith would do as well, similar to that. So I'm going to call this door, enter, save that, turn back on my keyhole, and there we go. That's looking great. Now we spoke about enable access because we're going to make sure this door is swinging the correct direction. And we need to make sure this door is swinging not from here, but from the hinges over here. So to do that, I'm going to press on door. I'm going to press on enable access, which we need to make sure we turn that off once we're done with it. And this is where the fulcrum of the door, where its hinge point will be in the middle, right there. Excellent. So we have the door almost done. We need to make a simple doorknob. I almost forgot to turn it off. It's so easy to forget to turn that off. I'm going to turn enable access off. I'm going to test how the door swings by pressing on R for rotate. And look at that. It's swinging correctly, but we need to put not the key, but the keyhole as part of this. So option G, door. And if I swing it again, we should see the key stays where it should. Everything else moves along with it. Aha. Somehow the enable access is not correctly set. I'm going to reset that again. Press on enable access, click on door, click on E for move, set that back right in there. There we go. Okay. Turn it off again. Let's test it out. Door, R for rotate. There we go. Good. All it needs is a texture. So we can go into our secret drawer here, our asset browser, click on materials, X out of this, come down to our legacy materials and wood. Let's try this. That looks okay for right now. How about if I tried this spruce? I like that. That's looking good. Close out of this. We have everything going. Let's give it a simple doorknob. So I'm going to create one sphere, press E to move, create a very simple cylinder, press R to rotate. Sphere, E. Let's give it a similar material. So to copy that, I can press Control, drag, Control, drag. That's our doorknob. Good for right now. And I'm going to take these, put them in a folder. So Option G, doorknob. Enter, and just drag that into the door. So we should only have two folders. If you have extra extraneous folders, I recommend organizing that up. And if I open up door, I still have access to everything I made. I can edit everything down to everything that you see here can be edited. All right. So we have the door. It's working. Let's test it out, make sure it's working properly. Hit R for rotate. It's working good. So I'm going to save. And now I'm going to make the room that this door is going to be in. So that could be as simple as making a cube, going into 4-up mode, zoom out. I'm going to call this room. T for transform. E for move. So I'm liking that. From this side, I do want my door more in the middle. There we go. So I do notice that, hey, my door's going to open up now, but I'm not going to be able to see through the room. So what I need to do is I need to actually cut this room. And to do that, I'm going to select my room, which is currently a cube, which is a primitive from the primitives menu. And I'm going to be making it editable so I can turn it into a polygon. So to do that, I can press C, or I can press this button down here, make editable. So I'm going to press make editable. I'm going to, once I do that, notice that it turns from a primitive icon into a polygon icon. If I hover over it, it says polygon. And now I have access to three things I didn't have access to before: points, edges, and faces. I call them, they are faces. So I'm going to be cutting with edges. And once I hit edges, I can come down to my line cut tool. And I'm going to come down to loop path cut. Notice now I can actually cut this polygon. So I'm going to do one cut here, one cut here, one cut here. I can zoom in. So a cut here. I had a cut here, cut here. Now I'm going to come back to my room, and I'd like to select faces. I'm going to come back out of the knife tool, back to selection tool, and select, turn off my door and key, select my face, and I'd like to press delete. Now I have deleted that, and I can enter my room. I'm liking that. Let's turn back on my door. Let's give this room a texture. All right. So we have all of this done. Let's take the door, push it a little bit further back. Now it's set in here. I could do a lot more stuff to make it look more realistic, but this is good for now. Now let's go ahead, save, file, save incremental, and let's animate the key opening the door. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here. I'm going to make sure I'm in 4-up mode, and we're going to be animating by making keyframes similar to like you would do in After Effects Premiere. So step one is we should only have 3 objects. If you have more than 3 objects, you should organize everything. I'm going to click on my key, and you've noticed since I haven't moved that, everything, the axis is in the middle. The fulcrum of the key, or what's called the edit axis, enable axis, is in directly of the shaft of the key. So it's going to rotate properly. Now I can select my key, and we're going to use something we haven't used before. That's our timeline. Timeline is down here. I recommend you can always edit this, but maybe stick with the same key, put the keyframes at the same point in time as I have them. So step one is to pull this key out, since we're not going to have the key in to begin with. Pull it out. Actually, so we had it positioned perfectly. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to come over to frame 30, and I'm going to set a keyframe by going to my key, coordinates, and I'm going to test this. I'm actually want to be operating on the Z axis because I'm pulling this out into space. I'm going to put a keyframe on Z. Then I'm going to pull this back, scrub to frame 0, and pull this out, and then put another keyframe here. So if I scrub from frame 0 to frame 30, we should have the key entering. Now we need to rotate the key. I'm going to do a test on that. Zoom in, scrub on frame 90. That's not what I'm looking for. Scrub on pitch, and that is. So we're on heading. The H stands for heading, P stands for pitch, B stands for banking. I'm going to put one keyframe on pitch. I'm going to put another keyframe, come over to frame 50, and I can see that I'm not happy with how that's looking. I need to have on frame 30, this needs to be further in here. That's looking better. So now I'm going to go over to frame 50, come back to P. I can do unlock. So 180, enter, keyframe, come to frame 65, turn my key all the way back. So I'm at P equals 0. Notice that we have a diamond. Whenever the diamond is red, it means we have a keyframe on that frame. So I'm about to pull this out of the door. So I need to have another keyframe on the Z axis. And if I come over to frame 90, I should be able to pull this out of the door. Notice I'm moving on the Z axis. And I'm going to give it another keyframe there. Let's take a look. The key enters the door, it unlocks the door, and it comes out. I'm happy with that. I press Command S to save. Now I'm going to open up the door. So I'll press on, first of all, I only have 90 frames here. So I'm going to give myself, press on this value down here, press in 180, click my door. I've selected the door, and I'm going to test which of these opens the door properly. It is H for heading. So I'm going to put a keyframe at 90 on heading of the door. I'm going to give the door time to open. I'm scrubbing to frame 140 and opening up the door, making another keyframe there. And let's take a look. So here's our camera, our default camera. I'm going to hit P for play. Now we have our basic animation, and that's the first part of making a room for our lock and key project. I look forward to seeing how this comes out for you. And notice that everything is organized, so it's easier. The more organization we have, the more creative we can be. We can concentrate on creativity instead of where everything is located in space. Your program will crash, so that's why I always save and file, save incremental as well. And then that way you're going to come from, right now I'm at version 13. So that you can label that however it makes sense to you. Thank you.